When she goes quiet, when the messages slow down or stop, when her energy feels distant and cold, the first assumption most people make is that she doesn't care anymore. The mind immediately jumps to rejection, replacement, or emotional detachment, but that assumption is usually wrong. Silence is rarely the absence of feeling. More often, it is the presence of too much feeling. When emotions become overwhelming, confusing, or threatening to one's sense of control, silence becomes a shield. She pulls back not because she feels nothing, but because she feels more than she knows how to handle. Women are deeply emotional beings, but they are also highly self-protective. When attachment grows strong, it creates vulnerability. Vulnerability feels risky, especially if she senses that caring more could lead to loss, disappointment, or imbalance. So instead of leaning in, she steps back. She creates distance to regulate herself emotionally. This is not a conscious strategy to punish or manipulate you. It is an instinctive response to regain internal balance. In that space, she is trying to understand what she feels, why she feels it, and whether it is safe to feel it again. What looks like indifference on the surface is often emotional overload underneath. She may appear calm, unaffected, even confident in her decision to pull away. But internally, her mind is replaying moments, conversations, laughter, and shared experiences. She compares how she felt when you were present to how she feels now that you are not. The absence forces reflection. When you were always there, emotionally available, predictable, and consistent, your value was familiar. Familiarity can dull perception. Distance sharpens it. Silence gives her the illusion of control. When emotions start to outweigh logic, people often retreat into stillness. She tells herself she is fine. She convinces herself she made the right choice. She distracts herself with work, friends, social media, or temporary attention. But distraction is not resolution. It only delays the emotional reckoning. The feelings don't disappear, they go underground. And what is suppressed has a way of resurfacing when the noise dies down. During this phase, her ego plays a major role. Admitting that she misses you means admitting that you matter deeply. It means accepting vulnerability and the possibility that she misjudged the situation. That is not easy. So instead of reaching out, she waits, she watches, she observes whether you chase, beg, explain, or try to prove yourself. Every move you make either confirms her sense of control or disrupts it. If you chase during her silence, you remove the space she needs to feel her emotions naturally. You turn her internal process into an external pressure. Pressure creates resistance. Resistance reinforces her need for distance. But when you respect the silence, when you don't try to fill it with anxiety-driven messages, something powerful happens. The silence becomes hers to sit with, and in that quiet, emotions grow louder. She starts noticing the emotional safety you provided. The way you listened, the way you were consistent, the way you didn't disappear when things got difficult. These qualities don't register fully when they are always present. They are felt most strongly when they are gone. Absence strips away distraction and reveals emotional truth. That's when missing someone becomes unavoidable. Silence also allows her subconscious to work. The conscious mind may tell her she's fine, that she's better off, that moving on is the right choice. But the subconscious mind doesn't respond to logic the same way. It responds to emotional patterns. If being with you made her feel grounded, understood, or emotionally alive, that imprint remains. Over time, the subconscious begins to question the narrative the conscious mind created. This inner conflict is uncomfortable, and discomfort often precedes emotional clarity. It's important to understand that emotional processing is not linear. Some days she feels empowered and certain. Other days, she feels nostalgic, curious, or unsettled. She may check your social media. She may ask mutual friends about you. She may replay your last conversation in her head, wondering if she misread your intentions or her own feelings. None of this is visible to you, but it is very real to her. Silence also tests emotional strength. She wants to see if you are centered or reactive. A man who remains calm, composed, and self-respecting during silence communicates strength without words. That strength contrasts sharply with the emotional chaos she may be feeling internally. It creates polarity. It makes her question who really has emotional control, and that question alone can reignite attraction. There is also fear involved. Missing someone means risking pain. It means acknowledging that if she reaches out and is rejected, it will hurt. Silence protects her from that risk. As long as she doesn't act, she doesn't have to face the outcome. But fear cannot suppress desire forever. When desire outweighs fear, action follows. That tipping point only happens when space is maintained. Many people misinterpret silence as a signal to do more, say more, or try harder. In reality, silence is often an invitation to do less. Less talking, less explaining, less emotional spilling. By doing less, you allow her to do more internally. You allow her emotions to move freely without interference. Emotional processing requires space the same way healing does. Another critical aspect of silence is identity recalibration. When a relationship ends or pauses, both people experience a shift in identity. She is redefining who she is without you. That process takes time. During that time, she is subconsciously assessing whether life feels better, worse, or incomplete. If your presence added value to her emotional world, that absence will eventually feel noticeable. What surprises most people is that the moment she appears the most distant is often the moment she is thinking the most. Emotional detachment doesn't happen quietly, it happens decisively. Silence, on the other hand, is ambiguous. Ambiguity usually means unresolved emotion. Unresolved emotion means attachment still exists. Your role during this phase is not to interpret every sign or overanalyze every delay. Your role is to remain grounded in self-respect. When you don't react impulsively, you communicate confidence. Confidence is calming. Calmness creates safety, and emotional safety is what she associates with you when the noise fades. Silence is not a verdict, it is a process. It is the emotional mind sorting itself out, and what it often sorts out is that what was lost carried more weight than what was gained by leaving. That realization cannot be forced, it must be discovered, and discovery only happens in space. When she finally reaches clarity, it often surprises her. She may not even understand why she feels drawn back. She just knows that something feels unfinished. That curiosity, that pull, is born in silence, not in arguments, not in explanations, not in persuasion. Silence gives truth room to breathe. Whether she eventually reaches out or not, understanding this changes how you move. You stop personalizing silence as rejection. You stop seeing it as failure. You see it as emotional processing that is out of your control. And paradoxically, by letting go of control, you regain power. Silence reveals character. It reveals emotional maturity. It reveals whether you can sit with uncertainty without collapsing into fear. And that strength doesn't just affect her perception of you. It transforms how you see yourself. You realize that your worth isn't measured by immediate validation. It's measured by how you handle absence, ambiguity, and emotional tension. When you disappear from her emotional landscape, something fundamental changes. While you were present, available, responsive, predictable, your value blended into the background of her daily life, not because you lacked worth, but because the human mind adapts quickly to consistency. What is always there becomes expected. What is expected stops being examined. This is why your absence matters more than your effort ever could. Distance creates contrast, and contrast is what awakens perception. Attraction is not built through persuasion or explanation. It is built through emotional experience. When you remove yourself from the dynamic, you remove the emotional stimulation she had grown accustomed to. Suddenly, the small things stand out, the silence after a long day, the lack of someone who understood her rhythms. The absence of emotional grounding, these gaps force her to feel what she once overlooked. Absence transforms familiarity into curiosity and comfort into longing. The mistake most people make is trying to fill the void they created with words. They text, call, explain, apologize, or attempt to prove their value. But value that must be proven is perceived as weak. When you step back fully, without resentment or theatrics, you let the void do the work for you. Human psychology is wired to notice loss more intensely than gain. When something meaningful is removed, the emotional system searches for it. This search creates desire. Your absence introduces uncertainty. Uncertainty is uncomfortable, but it is also stimulating. When you were always available, she knew where she stood. There was no mystery, no question, but when you pull back with dignity, she begins to wonder. What is he doing? Has he moved on? Does he still think about me? That curiosity reactivates emotional investment. It pulls her attention back toward you without you saying a word. Space also disrupts emotional control. As long as you were chasing or checking in, she felt in control of the situation. Control reduces attraction. When control shifts or disappears, emotional dynamics shift with it. Your absence removes her ability to predict your emotional availability. That unpredictability forces her to reevaluate the connection. Suddenly, you are not an option on standby. You are a presence she no longer has access to. Contrast is not just external, it is internal. She compares how she feels now to how she felt before. Emotional memory is powerful. It doesn't remember facts, it remembers feelings. If being with you made her feel calm, excited, supported, or desired, those feelings resurface in your absence. The present moment becomes the measuring stick against the past, and if the present feels emotionally flat, the past begins to glow brighter. This is where desire often reawakens, not because you reminded her of your value, but because she felt the lack of it. Desire is born from emotional contrast, not logic. She may tell herself she's better off. She may rationalize her distance. But emotions don't follow rational timelines. When the emotional experience of absence outweighs the comfort of distance, desire returns. Another powerful element of absence is self-respect. When you step back without anger or pleading, you communicate that your life does not revolve around her response. That message is subtle, but it is deeply attractive. It signals confidence, abundance, and emotional stability. These traits are felt, not explained, and they stand in sharp contrast to neediness, which repels attraction regardless of intention. Your absence also allows her to experience consequences, not punishment, but natural consequences. She experiences life without your support, your presence, and your emotional consistency. Consequences create awareness. Awareness creates appreciation. Appreciation creates longing. None of this happens if you remain emotionally available while being taken for granted. Space gives her time to project. In the absence of new information, the mind fills in the blanks. Often, it fills them with idealized memories rather than recent frustrations. This is not manipulation, it is how memory works. Emotional distance softens conflict and amplifies positive recollection. Over time, the emotional narrative shifts from what went wrong to what felt right. It's important to understand that absence only works when it is authentic. If you disappear hoping to trigger a reaction, the energy behind it is still needy. True absence comes from choosing yourself, from redirecting energy toward growth, purpose, and emotional grounding. When your absence is real, it changes you. And when you change, the dynamic changes. As you focus on your own life, your energy shifts. You become less reactive, less invested in outcome, more centered. That inner shift is often felt even without contact. When she does think of you, the emotional tone attached to your memory is different. It feels stronger, calmer, more grounded. That contrast makes her question why she let that go. Distance also allows attraction to breathe. Attraction suffocates under pressure. It thrives in freedom. When you give her the freedom to feel, to miss, to wonder, you allow attraction to reemerge organically. Forced closeness kills desire. Chosen closeness ignites it. Your absence challenges her assumptions. She may have assumed you would always be there. That assumption created complacency. When it's broken, it forces reassessment. Reassessment often leads to realization, and realization often leads to action. There is also a competitive aspect to absence, even if it's unspoken. When you are no longer available, the subconscious wonders if someone else might occupy that space. This isn't jealousy in a toxic sense, it's awareness of value. Scarcity heightens perception. When access is limited, worth increases. What surprises most people is that absence doesn't just affect her feelings toward you, it affects how she sees herself. She begins to question her decisions, her timing, her emotional instincts. That introspection can be uncomfortable, but discomfort is the birthplace of growth and change. The key is patience. Absence works on emotional time, not logical schedules. There may be moments when nothing seems to happen, but emotional processes are often invisible until they reach a tipping point. When they do, they appear sudden, even though they were building quietly all along. It's also crucial to let go of outcome attachment. If your happiness depends on her reaction, absence loses its power. True strength comes from being okay regardless of whether she returns. That emotional independence is the foundation of real attraction. When she eventually feels the contrast deeply enough, her behavior changes. She may reach out casually, test the waters, or find subtle ways to reconnect, or she may simply feel a renewed emotional pull that surprises her. Either way, it originates from the space you created. The real shift never begins with her, it begins with you. Most people spend their energy watching for signs, decoding silence, replaying conversations, and trying to predict what she might do next. That mindset keeps you emotionally tethered, reactive, and stuck in her frame. But the moment you stop waiting for movement from her and redirect your focus inward, something fundamental changes in the dynamic. It's subtle at first, but it's powerful. When your attention moves away from seeking validation and toward building yourself, the emotional balance shifts. When you focus on yourself, you stop leaking energy. Neediness is not always obvious. It doesn't always look like begging or chasing. Often it shows up as mental fixation, emotional anticipation, and outcome dependence. Even if you're silent externally, internally you're still reaching. Women are incredibly sensitive to emotional energy. They may not be able to articulate it, but they feel when someone is emotionally anchored to their reactions. The moment that anchor is lifted, the emotional pressure disappears, and that absence of pressure is felt immediately. Self-focus brings emotional stability. You begin to regulate your own emotions instead of outsourcing that responsibility to her behavior. Your mood no longer rises or falls based on whether she texts, watches your story, or mentions your name. This stability is magnetic. Emotional calm communicates strength. Strength creates safety, and safety is one of the deepest drivers of attraction. As you redirect energy into your purpose, health, work, and growth, you rebuild your identity outside of the relationship. This is critical. Attraction requires two whole individuals, not one person orbiting another. When your life becomes full again, you stop subconsciously asking her to fill emotional gaps. Instead, you show up as someone who chooses connection, not someone who needs it. This internal shift changes your behavior naturally. You communicate differently. You respond rather than react. You speak from clarity instead of fear. Even silence feels different when it's grounded in self-respect instead of anxiety. That difference is felt. It's not about playing hard to get, it's about genuinely being centered. When she senses this shift, it often confuses her. She was used to being the emotional reference point. Your attention, your effort, your concern reinforced her position in the dynamic. When that changes, she feels the loss of influence. Influence and attraction are closely linked. When someone no longer seeks your approval, their value often increases in your eyes. Focusing on yourself also removes emotional predictability. Predictability kills attraction. Growth creates movement. As you evolve, she no longer knows exactly where she stands or how you feel. That uncertainty reactivates curiosity. Curiosity leads to attention. Attention leads to renewed emotional engagement. Another important aspect is self-respect. When you choose yourself, you send a clear message. You value your time, your energy, and your emotional well-being. This is not arrogance, it's alignment. Self-respect sets a standard, and standards create polarity. Polarity is the tension that fuels attraction. As you grow, you also gain perspective. You start to see the relationship more clearly. What worked, what didn't, what you tolerated, and what you shouldn't have. This clarity changes your emotional tone. You're no longer desperate to restore the past. You're open to something better, whether it's with her or someone else. That openness is felt as confidence. It's important to understand that women are not attracted to potential. They are attracted to presence. When you are fully present in your own life, you radiate grounded energy. You're no longer trying to prove your worth. You embody it, and embodied value is far more compelling than explained value. This shift also disrupts emotional roles. If she was used to being pursued, admired, or emotionally leaned on, your independence forces her to reassess her role. She may begin to wonder if she misjudged your strength or underestimated your ability to move forward. That reassessment often reignites respect, and respect is a prerequisite for lasting attraction. Focusing on yourself also protects you. It prevents you from being pulled back into unhealthy dynamics out of loneliness or fear. It allows you to engage from choice rather than compulsion. If she does return, you meet her from a place of balance, not imbalance, and that changes the outcome entirely. There's also an energetic honesty in self-focus. You're no longer trying to manage her emotions or manipulate outcomes. You're simply living your life. That authenticity is rare, and rarity increases value. When she senses that your happiness no longer depends on her validation, it challenges her assumptions about your emotional availability. Often, this is the moment she starts to feel the shift most strongly, not when you disappear, but when you reappear differently. When you speak with calm certainty, when you're warm but not over-invested, when you're open but not attached. That combination is deeply attractive because it signals emotional maturity. Your growth also creates contrast. She remembers who you were when you were trying to hold things together. Now she sees who you are when you're standing on your own. That contrast can be startling. It makes her question whether she walked away from something that was still evolving. It's important to note that this shift is not a tactic. If you focus on yourself solely to get a reaction from her, the energy remains conditional. True change happens when you genuinely commit to your own path. Ironically, that's when reactions tend to come, not because you wanted them, but because you no longer needed them. As you continue to grow, you also become more selective. You're no longer willing to accept mixed signals or emotional inconsistency. This selectivity is felt as strength. It communicates that access to you is earned, not assumed. That message alone can dramatically alter how she perceives you. Over time, the dynamic flips. You are no longer waiting to be chosen. You are choosing. That shift in power is not aggressive or controlling. It's quiet and grounded. And quiet confidence is often the most compelling kind. Whether she reaches out or not, focusing on yourself guarantees one outcome: you win. You become stronger, clearer, and more aligned. If she returns, it's because she feels the shift and wants to reconnect with the version of you that no longer needs her to feel whole. If she doesn't, you've already built a life that doesn't depend on her presence. In the end, the moment you stop waiting is the moment everything changes. Not because she suddenly realizes your value, but because you do. And that self-recognition is the foundation of every healthy connection, past, present, or future. When people think about someone coming back, they imagine it happens because of effort, persistence, or emotional endurance. They believe holding on tighter, staying available, or constantly reminding the other person of what they shared will somehow pull them back. But the truth is almost always the opposite. Real return only happens when attachment loosens, not when it tightens. Letting go is not giving up, it is releasing control. And paradoxically, release is what creates the conditions for genuine choice. When you hold on emotionally, even in silence, you are still trying to manage the outcome. You are waiting, hoping, interpreting signs, and assigning meaning to every small detail. That inner grip creates tension. Tension is felt even at a distance. It creates an invisible pressure that pushes rather than pulls. When someone senses that they are being emotionally held onto, it reinforces their need to stay away. Freedom is essential for desire. Without it, attraction cannot breathe. Letting go does not mean shutting down or becoming cold. It means accepting uncertainty without trying to resolve it through force. It means allowing the situation to unfold without inserting your fear into it. When you let go, you stop chasing clarity and allow clarity to find you. This shift is subtle, but it is transformative. The emotional energy changes from grasping to grounded. If she comes back after you let go, it is because she chooses to, not because she feels obligated, pressured, or persuaded. Choice is the foundation of authentic connection. Anything that returns under pressure carries resentment, imbalance, or unfinished conflict. But when someone returns freely, they do so with renewed intention. They come back because they want to, not because they were convinced they should. Letting go also removes the power struggle. Holding on often creates an unspoken contest of who cares more. That imbalance erodes respect. When you release attachment, you step out of that contest entirely. You are no longer trying to win her back. You are simply living your life. That neutrality dissolves resistance. Resistance only exists when there is something to resist. There is also dignity in letting go, Dignity communicates self-worth without words. It says, I value connection, but I value myself more. That message is deeply attractive because it reflects emotional maturity. It shows that you are capable of love without losing yourself. Many people confuse intensity with depth, but true depth comes from balance, not obsession. When you let go, you also create emotional safety. Safety does not come from reassurance or constant availability. It comes from knowing that connection is a choice, not a trap. If she feels that returning means losing her autonomy or being pulled back into emotional chaos, she will stay away. But if she senses that she can approach freely without pressure or expectation, the door remains open. Letting go also clarifies truth. It strips away fantasy and reveals reality. If she comes back, you know it is real. It is not driven by guilt, loneliness, or fear of losing you to someone else. It is driven by genuine desire and recognition. And if she does not come back, you gain something equally valuable, certainty. Certainty frees you from waiting. Waiting is one of the most draining emotional states because it suspends your life in limbo. Many people fear letting go because they believe it guarantees loss. In reality, holding on is what guarantees stagnation. Letting go creates movement. Movement creates possibility. Possibility is where life happens. When you release attachment, you give both of you permission to grow, whether together or apart. Another important truth is that letting go changes you. It strengthens your emotional core. You learn that you can survive uncertainty, rejection, and absence without collapsing. That resilience becomes part of who you are. It changes how you show up in all relationships. You become less reactive, more discerning, and more grounded. If she does come back, she meets a different version of you, not the one who was afraid of losing her, but the one who learned how to stand alone. That version sets healthier boundaries, communicates more clearly, and engages from choice rather than fear. This is why many reconnections fail when people haven't truly let go. They reunite with the same emotional patterns, and the same outcome repeats. Letting go also means releasing the fantasy of control. You stop believing that the right words, timing, or strategy can guarantee a result. You accept that connection requires mutual willingness. This acceptance is liberating. It removes the burden of performance and allows authenticity to return. There is also a deeper lesson in letting go, self-trust. You begin to trust that you will be okay regardless of the outcome. That trust replaces anxiety with calm. Calm is powerful. Calm communicates confidence. Confidence attracts respect. And respect is the soil where attraction grows. When someone returns after you've let go, it often feels unexpected, even surreal. Not because it was unlikely, but because you were no longer waiting for it. You were no longer orienting your life around a possibility. That detachment makes the return feel lighter, cleaner, and more real. And if she doesn't return, letting go still leads you forward. You don't remain stuck in emotional limbo. You open space for new experiences, new connections, and new growth. You stop romanticizing someone who chose distance and start valuing those who choose presence. Ultimately, letting go is not about her at all. It's about reclaiming your center. It's about choosing peace over obsession, growth over stagnation, and truth over illusion. Whether she comes back or not becomes secondary to the fact that you no longer abandon yourself. If she does come back, it will be because you stopped trying to hold the door open and simply left it unlocked. You didn't beg her to return. You didn't stand guard outside. You trusted that if she wanted to walk through, she would. And that trust is what makes any return meaningful. In the end, holding on says, I'm afraid to lose you. Letting go says, I trust myself. And trust in yourself is the strongest foundation any relationship can stand on.